Well, don't move, don't move.
You
Sorry.
know, as two Americans living in Ecuador, I think there's a bond that you feel because we're like we're a rare breed here, you know.
Ah, yeah. Well, here we're just gringos.
Yeah, sometimes they ask me if I'm fresh off the boat, and I say no, I've actually been here for over 10 years. You know, probably because of the accent, and they're so used to just seeing tourists.
Yeah. So one thing that you know, there are it's sometimes you get perks
Hmm.
from it, but other times it's clear that maybe maybe you have to think about if you're being charged more for things and haggling. This becomes it's like a part of the culture. So it's kind of, you do find it refreshing to
Hmm.
run into people who speak English and
Yeah, but I noticed that because when I lived in Peru, I would get charged more, and I don't notice that so much in Ecuador because Ecuador it's a lot more tropical, multicultural, and there are um, it's mixed race. Uh, I mean, you can go to places like Manabí and you can see white people just like me. You probably, with your physiognomy, you probably fit in more because like they might not know right off the bat that you're an American.
there are moments, yeah, like
Mhm,
when if I shave and do my hair a certain way,
mhm,
sometimes they think maybe I'm from a different South American country,
mhm,
like Brazil. This happens a lot.
mhm.
And
Could be a lot.
sometimes, depending on if I'm not talking a lot, they'll think I'm from a different part of Ecuador.
Yeah.
But Machala doesn't have a whole lot of variation.
Mhm.
And I would love to have visited Manabí. You've been to a lot more places than me.
Yeah, when I came back to Machala 4 weeks ago, actually went down by the beaches, took the coastal route. It's a lot longer, but been a long time since I had been to those beaches. But yeah, Manabí was a Spanish colony, so there are white Ecuadorians there, just like in Esmeralda. You heard about the ship, the slave ship that escaped or was shipwrecked a couple hundred years ago, or whenever it was, probably longer than that. But that's why they're African Ecuadorians because somehow uh, they escaped. Did you hear that story?
No, but it's interesting. I'm listening.
Yeah, no. There was a ship of slaves that the slaves either took over the ship or got shipwrecked, but that cities they're African Ecuadorians, and so that's one of the things I like about Ecuador is at least along the coast, there's a lot of different races. It's a different mentality when you get into the mountains, or you got the Indian stuff going on there, but
What is the mentality there?
well, in the mountains, uh, the Indians, they preserve their cultural heritage, but
Okay.
it's a very different vibe from the coast, if you know what I mean. I think that in the coast, it's more tropical. People play Colombian music in the businesses, and it's more open. Whereas in the mountains, they're closer to their Indian heritage, but they also tend to be a little bit more reserved and a little colder.
Really?
I'll tell you a story because during the health circus of 2020, I would go back and forth between Machala, Guayaquil, but also I spent some time in the mountains like Cuenca, Quito, Loja, and when I would get, you know how people in the United States talk about how they would travel to the United States and they go through these regions, and some states everybody would be wearing masks, and then they go to other states and hardly anybody would be wearing masks. Like towards the end of 2020, going into 2021, like California and Oregon, everybody would wear masks. You had to; it was the law. But then they get into the middle of the states like Texas and Kansas, Oklahoma, nobody was wearing masks because it had been it was such a political symbol. And so the states in the United States were considered the most liberal was where they were wearing the masks. But the states that were considered the most conservative, like Texas, Kansas, they wouldn't wear masks. But in Ecuador, you know, you could get away with not wearing a mask in Guayaquil or Machala. Even security guards, I'd see them, they just have them around their chin or on their mouth. But then you go to Quito, Cuenca, or Loja, these mountain cities, and everybody would be covering, wearing a cover with the masks. And, you know, police would try to harass me and stuff. And I mentioned this to some of the people there, and they would say, yes, but on the coast, they're more liberal. So they considered mask wearing to be something that was conservative, and they considered that the states in the mountains or the provinces in the mountains were more conservative, whereas in the United States, if it was considered liberal to wear masks and conservative to take them off. Exactly the opposite from here. But I actually don't think it has anything to do with. I don't think it had anything to do with being conservative or liberal, because as conservatives, we want to conserve. Getting my face out of the camera,
It's
and
fine.
conserving the traditions. And what you saw during the health circus was Ecuador was not conserving their traditions. Like one of the things one of the customs in Latin American society is they'll stand right next to you when they're talking, like toe to toe. Whereas Americans like English, and we have the space. We don't like uh,
Not
t-
right now. We're
talk.
standing
Yeah,
pretty close right now.
but during the so-called pandemic, uh, they lost that custom, and they wouldn't, you know, social distance. And it's sad, but it didn't come out of nothing. You saw how you see how there's such faith in international institutions and such faith in the pronouncements that are coming from these international organizations. That it's a new type of imperialism, and it's really replacing and has replaced the local customs. Whereas I think in the United States, people are closer to power, and so there's at the same time more skepticism about like maybe the political motives behind mask wearing and stuff.
Well, yeah, I think we all had a very strong opinion about that when we were encouraged or when it was a regulation to wear masks. Some people supporting it and some people more skeptical. Um,
I was definitely more skeptical because I saw it as a political power grab, um, getting everybody online for education, also as a way to accustom them to be using AI, and thus they could be more easily tracked. And I think the mask also was so that the facial recognition technology could be tested. The covering up your face, it really tested the limits of the facial recognition technology, and it was able to hone like how much of the face can you recognize if it's being covered up. And those, I think, one of the one of the more nefarious motivations for the mask wearing was.
it was certainly something that made me skeptical as well,
Mhm.
and it was definitely fascinating with the ubiquity with which it was accepted internationally. And this definitely
Mhm.
skewed my opinion of authority figures and their autonomy, as well as their medical industries and how they operate.
Mhm.
So there was a lot that I observed, uh, including transmission rates and things like that,
Mhm.
exposures to things within the nasal cavity in peoples.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's diff-
Oh, oop.
Definitely, definitely a factor. Well, I don't believe that viruses exist. And as a result of the health circus, I launched my AIDS Foundation at the Facebook page in Spanish for the Foundation for the Truth About AIDS. And really, it galvanized me as an activist. I started studying AIDS in 2011, but I was only focused on AIDS. And I never got into like how do they say they prove viruses exist? And it was a chance to actually go deeper and start looking at polio and measles. And surprise, surprise, viruses don't even exist. Can you stand over here? You're kind of so we don't you block the light. That light's really annoying.
Well, we're gonna have a nice little ugly video here.
What other countries in South America have you been to, Thomas?
Oh, I didn't know we were transitioning into the full
Well, just for
interview.
the a couple minutes we have left. What's your
Sure.
favorite country you've visited so far?
Here, Ecuador,
Yeah. What do you like so much about Ecuador?
the nature.
The nature?
Hmm.
Well, you're in the city. You're in Machala. Do you ever get out to the rivers?
Absolutely. If it was up to me, I wouldn't even be in the city.
Yeah, you make an effort to get out to the rivers.
Yeah, I'm just here to make some extra money. If I had all my money in order and I could make money without coming to the city, I wouldn't be here at all.
Okay, well, I hope you share this video with the homies in Chicago so they can know what I do and the journalism and
And I hope the homies in Chicago loosen the strings so I can make a little extra cash to make that dream come true.
are they controlling you even down here?
Well, I wouldn't say that they're, you know what? Yeah, yeah, they are 1,000%. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I know I face censorship online, and that's why I don't publish on YouTube so much anymore. I'm on BitChute.
Mm. Well, I won't be making any more online. Thank you for the invitation, but
Yeah.
I personally won't be making any more videos, statements, posts online.
Is it okay if I post this on my social media on Facebook, Instagram, BitChute?
That's fine by me. All the creeps that creep on me already creep on me through whatever means they do so.
And they creep on me as well. So, with a gift of gab from the City of Truth, talent alone from God, you're listening to the voice of the people, the voice of God. Over and out.